Welcome back to our final session of Day 3 of the Nature for Life Hub. Today, we have explored important topics in the realm of policy, agenda setting, and bold action. Now, in our final session of the day, we will be exploring an innovative solution that has massive global potential. We hope you enjoy this next session, the Big Enchilada, mapping nature for people and planet. See you after.
Hello, I'm Femi. Okay, I know you're here for the title, but you're going to stay for the content. What are we going to be doing? Well, we're looking at spatial mapping, a combination of science, technology, innovation, but we're using all of that to have better nature-based solutions, not just because we've got the tech, not just because we've got the tools, but how do we use them for decision making? We have 3 excellent keynotes who will be talking to you about different ways and uses of spatial mapping. So our conversation starts with Carlos Manuel Rodriguez. He's the CEO of the Global Environment Facility, also known as Jeff, about spatial mapping for policy coherence. Carlos, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm really pleased to be here to talk about this very specific issue because it's relevant nowadays that we've been generating momentum and political will around the need to protect nature based on the understanding that nature underpins human well-being. In that context, we need to help governments and private sector to really, walk the talk. And in that respect, we need to address an empty space that is within our conservation sustainability agenda. The empty space is within the decision-making processes, private and public sector, the data, and the technology. Sometimes we got the proper institutions and the political will that there is no data. So the impact is minimal. Sometimes we got the data, but we don't have the technology. And sometimes we don't have even the 3 of them, the formal decision-making processes with data and technology. The Big Enchilada wants to narrow down these open spaces within these improved decision-making processes so we can have not just bold decisions, but decisions that can really impact at the scale that we need it. This is the whole effort behind the Big Enchilada, particularly on generating more data. And yes, we may have data at the global level, but when we try to down that at the national or sub-national level, we fail. We fail big time, even though we got probably 2,000 satellites flying all over our planet. And in this respect, we need to really map very well where is nature. But when we talk about mapping nature, we need to understand that we're talking about fresh water, we're talking about forest resources, we're talking about carbon, we're talking about biodiversity, and then you can go in a very granular base and be able to generate a lot of information. As you generate information and narrow the gap within the information and the technology, the best available technology, we can generate something that is missing globally, which is the political agreement at the country level on how we should manage landscapes. We should continue oil and gas and open pit mining, or we should use biodiversity for ecotourism and improve and manage better our watersheds for climate resilience. I mean, this is the kind of decision information that we need so we can have the proper political dialogues at the country level where we can agree on the best optimum use of the land and the resources. The Big Enchilada is this effort, and I'm extremely happy that in a bottom-up approach towards fulfilling the political commitment, the technology and the data is being developed so we can work with countries. Thank you so much, Femi.
Thank you, Carlos. We will hear more from you if we get all of our keynotes back together. I'm going to move on with keynote number 2. And this is really important because what we're looking at is spatial mapping, the technology of it, helping us to map nature for people and planet. But the technology bit is where Rebecca Moore comes into our keynote lineup. She is the director of Google Earth. She has brought pictures. I'm looking forward to it. I'm leaning in, Rebecca. I'm leaning in. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Femi, very much. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you about advances in technology and how they can support better mapping, managing, protection of nature. No surprise, we're facing a crisis with epic implications for current and future generations, our families, our loved ones, our friends. You know, the time to change course is running out. And at Google, we do believe that technology can help advance our understanding of a changing planet so we can take better action for our future. Over a decade ago, we launched Google Earth Engine as the first cloud-hosted planetary-scale geospatial analysis platform with the goal to improve understanding and knowledge of our changing planet and apply that to address global challenges. Earth Engine combines a daily updating and sometimes every 15 minutes updating catalog of hundreds of feeds of satellite imagery and other geospatial data sets, together with unprecedented access to cloud computing horsepower to turn all of those pixels together into knowledge to guide decisions. The first groundbreaking result was Matt Hansen's high-resolution map of global forest cover and change that he published in Science in 2013. It's garnered almost 6,000 citations to date. That map required 1 million hours of computation, but because we ran it on 10,000 computers in parallel, the result was ready in a few days. On a single computer, it would have taken 15 years. This data set, and by the way, I hope you fasten your seatbelt because we're going to go fast. This data set provided the foundation for Global Forest Watch, which now provides weekly alerts on new deforestation events, such as in the Amazon, so authorities can actually take rapid action. Moving to biodiversity, one of the first significant biodiversity results using Earth Engine was led by Anup Joshi, and he showed that the international goal to double the wild tiger population is achievable with effective forest protection and management. So these computational breakthroughs in cloud computing are relevant for nature. As Dr. Joshi reported, what would have taken 1.5 years was done in less than a week using Google Earth Engine. The Tiger study then helped inform a comprehensive global study focused on nature-based solutions. A team led by Eric Dinerstein used Earth Engine to create a blueprint and spatially explicit map to help countries solve the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change that they call the global safety net. So, are we done? Let's see here. Are you seeing? Yes. Are we done? No. There's a new project that we're talking about publicly here for the first time, in which we're partnering with National Geographic Society and the World Resources Institute to build a dynamically updating land use land cover map at 10-meter resolution. We call it Dynamic World. Land cover you can think of as the Earth's base map. It's the fundamental data set that underlies science, policy, and action across sectors. I know I'm going fast here, but our goal is to provide a regularly updating land cover map that has unprecedented spatial and temporal resolution, is free and open to help countries set and track targets to protect, manage, and restore ecosystems. So how did we do this? Well, World Resources Institute brought their expertise in defining the taxonomy, the set of 9 land cover classes that would be the legend essentially for this land cover map. National Geographic then guided experts to develop the training set to train the deep learning model, the AI model, by labeling more than 25,000 Sentinel-2 satellite images, more than 1 billion pixels with the appropriate land cover class. We can safely say this is the first time a deep learning model has been run at this scale over the entire globe with multiple innovations, and this is now in preparation for publication. So now here we're demonstrating teaching the model to learn what a given land cover class looks like. So you can see this set of images that are labeled go into the model, and then we present it with a new image, and it classifies each pixel with a land cover class automatically. So now let's look at the results, and I'm almost done here. Here's a section of an area in New Zealand. This is the imagery, and here is the 10-meter resolution land cover map. Here's an area in Costa Rica, and here is the corresponding 10-meter resolution land cover map. We've run this now for 26 countries. Costa Rica was the first, and we're sharing these initial country maps with UNDP for the ELSA mapping process to test the usefulness of these maps for ELSA mapping. We plan to release the global map next year, including a 2020 map, as well as annual maps back to the start of the Sentinel archive. So if all goes well, what do we hope will come of this? This is a wonderful illustration of the power of Costa Rica's policy and implementation on the ground to restore healthy forest from 1984 to 2018. May there be many more such outcomes. Thanks very much.
The fearless Rebecca Moore doing a live show and tell on a virtual platform. What could possibly go wrong? Nothing, Rebecca. Fantastic.
Great.
We are going to get you to come back. In fact, all of our keynotes will be coming back in about 10-15 minutes, which gives you a chance, whatever platform you're watching on right now. So this is Nature for Life Hub. So you may be on YouTube, you may be on the actual website, wherever you are right now, where you're watching it as it's happening. You can ask a question to our keynotes, but you need to be quick because they will take those questions in about 10-15 minutes time. So our final keynote is very special, and we're looking at spatial mapping for this keynote and the connection with science, right? Thomas Lovejoy, Senior Fellow of Biodiversity and Environmental Science at the United Nations Foundation. Thomas, good to have you.
So thank you, Femi. So here's what's so incredibly exciting about these new remote imagery capacities. Here we are, it's Biodiversity Week at the UN, and biodiversity is in deep trouble. And one of the reasons it's in trouble is that it basically integrates every environmental problem that humans are involved with. It all affects living things. And similarly, geography and remote sensing is a very powerful integrating tool. So when you can look at essentially land cover with this remote sensing imagery, you're actually looking at what's happening to the biodiversity for better or for worse. So it's extremely powerful. I'm deeply excited about dynamic world. So one of the things that is so great about it is that it's so up to date, almost to the minute, which means that policy decisions and action decisions can be based on essentially current information. It will allow planners to figure out ways to put natural connections back into the landscape to make all that biodiversity able to move in the directions that climate change are pushing them. Without those connections, the plants and animals involved would basically be facing an obstacle, and extinction would be the other alternative. So this gives us the ability to knit back nature, to see it responding in real time, adjust what we do, and even take a huge place like the Amazon, which basically operates as a system, making half of its own rainfall and generating moisture for every country in South America except Chile. It has to be managed as a system, even though it's 8 different countries. And this kind of imagery will give us the ability to watch all of that and find ways to back off from a tipping point towards a major transformation to dry savanna-like vegetation in the south and the east. So that's the power of this remote sensing imagery, to integrate the best of science into the latest of information for the best decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We will hear more from Thomas and Rebecca and Carlos in about 10 minutes' time. But first, I want to share with you an extraordinary video. It's audacious in the idea that it is sharing, which is in the future. What we would like to do, what we'd like to happen, is for 50% of our globe to be protected. I did say 50%. Lean in. This video is called The Global Safety Net.
Nature is key to rebalancing our global climate system and ensuring a vibrant future for all. Ecosystems absorb carbon from the atmosphere and produce the essentials for life on our planet: fresh water, clean air, and healthy soil. Intact natural lands also help to prevent viral outbreaks like COVID-19. Tragically, in the past 50 years, we've lost half of our natural land, destroying 2/3 of all living creatures on Earth. We must reverse the damage, and we can, by creating the Global Safety Net, a network of land areas that are vital for nature and humanity. The Global Safety Net is the first comprehensive estimate of the total land area requiring protection to solve the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. There are 6 main layers that make up the Global Safety Net. First are areas already protected by governments, totaling 15% of the planet's land. Second are species rarity sites. These are additional areas that need to be protected immediately before rare animals and plants are lost forever. Third are high biodiversity areas, groupings of plants and animals that are vital to maintaining our ecosystems. Fourth are large mammal landscapes, like the Pantanal wetlands of western Brazil, home to the world's largest jaguars. Fifth are areas with a large extent of intact wilderness, continuous forests, shrublands, and grasslands. Sixth are land areas that provide additional carbon absorption and storage, helping to stabilize our global climate system. The Global Safety Net also incorporates an analysis of potential wildlife corridors, areas of degraded land that can be restored to connect ecosystems back together, allowing nature to be more resilient as the Earth warms. Taken together, the layers of the Global Safety Net total approximately 50% of the world's land, offering a blueprint to restore our biosphere, helping to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and providing the ecosystem services vital to our survival. Over 1/3 of these lands are communally held by indigenous peoples, which demonstrates the importance of safeguarding territorial rights for these communities. You can explore the Global Safety Net through a new web application, which displays how every country and region can contribute in different ways towards this common goal. Visit gsnapp.org to learn more about your region and how it can contribute towards a world in which nature and humanity coexist and thrive together.
How do you do a cost-benefit analysis on an initiative that is so audacious that it wants to protect 50% of our globe. How do you even begin with the finance there? You don't have to, because Juko Hopman, who's associate partner at McKinsey and Company, has been crunching the numbers for us.
Nature is not typically destroyed because people actively dislike nature. Instead, it is destroyed because the business case for the alternative, for conversion to farm, fishery, mine, or suburb, is so often better articulated and more compelling. And yet we know very well that humanity relies on nature and natural capital to thrive, including to thrive economically. Now, conservation involves legitimate and very difficult trade-offs, but still this disconnect suggests that a form of market failure caused by lack of information may frequently lead to suboptimal investment decisions. McKinsey and Company set out to contribute to addressing this market failure with a new report, Valuing Nature Conservation, in which we built on existing data sets and methodologies to quantify the benefits and costs of protecting 30% of the planet by 2030. Because conservation trade-offs are often made at a local level, we used highly detailed 5x5 kilometer geospatial analytics and assessed 35,000 data layers for each of the 6 million pixels on the planet. And we then considered 6 different scenarios to get to that 30% protection globally. Depending on the scenario, we find that protecting 30% of the planet could reduce atmospheric CO2 by 0.9 to 2.6 gigatons annually. It would create or protect about 30 million jobs and safeguard a total of $300 to $500 billion in GDP. And it would expand the protected habitat of 32,000 species threatened with extinction on average by 2.2 to 2.8 times, as well as decrease the risk of future disease outbreaks by protecting areas with high concentrations of zoonotic diseases. On the cost side, we project that the operating expenditure of conservation would go up by about $20 to $45 billion a year. But in over half the areas that we assessed, the GDP benefits created by ecotourism and sustainable fisheries alone would outsize these operational costs by more than 3 times, even before considering the many downstream benefits that we were unable to size for all 6 million pixels. Taking this forward, we need to develop the natural business case at the decision maker level, nation by nation, reef by reef, and forest by forest. Based on successes we've seen and had a chance to contribute to in public health, we propose that one powerful platform for action on this front would be the establishment of alliances that can pool resources and expertise to accelerate conservation projects and enable decision makers at all levels to more optimally allocate resources towards conservation.
We have 5 minutes for a post-keynote discussion. Let's bring back Carlos and Rebecca and also Thomas. Now, you may remember Carlos talked about policy, Rebecca talked about tech, and Thomas talked about science. What struck you, Carlos, as you were listening to your co-keynote speakers? What resonated?
One very basic element that Rebecca brought to all of us, which was the satellite images of Costa Rica, Central Pacific part of Costa Rica, where my country, where in 25 years we were able to double the size of our forest. Well, we tripled the economy. We went 100% renewable energy, and the population doubled, proving that protecting nature, restoring nature, and protecting nature is not a burden to growth and prosperity and income. But what did really work in Costa Rica? Well, we put the decision making, we narrowed the gap within decision makers and data and technology. And this is what we want to do now at the global scale.
Rebecca, what resonated for you as you were listening to your co-keynote speakers? What was, oh, that was good.
I just think we're all so much on the same page, and we all have to be on the same page, because no sector of society, whether it's, academia or government or tech, is going to solve this alone. So we have to find common language. We have to set common goals. We have to, put our shoulders to the plow together. And I felt that all three of us are really on the same page. And, I think I'm very excited about being able to contribute technology to support the policy goals and the biodiversity scientific goals articulated by Carlos and Thomas.
Thomas.
So we have the data, we have the urgent mission to restore nature on this planet and create a better future for humanity. And it will be very exciting to do it. It'll be a grand adventure with great rewards at the end.
We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to use them. This is from one of our delegates watching on our virtual platform. What are each of your visions for bringing these tools together to meet the bold commitments we heard from world leaders this morning as part of the Leaders Pledge for Nature, where some 64 leaders says we are pledging our country, we are going to get behind biodiversity and be actively involved in it. That was some question there, but I'm going to ask you to give me your elevator answer, because we're going to move on pretty quickly. Thomas, for you, how do you make this happen?
Well, I think basically we need a new social concept of embedding human aspiration in nature.
Rebecca?
We're there. We're all in. We're at your service. We're ready to be the IT department for nature. Just put us to work.
Well, I like that. As long as you've got a good IT department, not one of those ones that never pick up the phone. Good analogy, though. Obviously, Google Earth has an excellent IT department. Carlos, you better have.
Doco mentions us the economic benefits to protect 30% of the planet. I can only imagine if we were to protect 50% of the planet.
Thank you so much, Keynotes. Good job. Thomas, Rebecca, Carlos, we appreciate you. Thank you for being on our session today. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Femi.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Good questions as well, platform. All right, so we are looking now at national stories as we map nature for people and the planets. The Big Enchilada is the part of the title for this session. So what we wanted to do was give you a vision from down on the ground from 5 countries that the UNDP is working with. And you'll hear the term ELSA, Essential Life Support Areas. Where should we start? Carlos will be very happy with where we're starting. We're going to start in Costa Rica with Andrea Meza. She's the Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. And also Rafael Monge Vargas. He's the Director of the National Center for Geo-Environmental Information of the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. That is some very long business card. Let's hear what they both have to say.
Hello, my name is Andrea Meza, and I am the Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. 2020 is a critical year for humanity and for the planet we call home. We face 3 deeply interconnected crises: climate change, biodiversity loss, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's look at climate change. Experts agree that we have less than 10 years to prevent global temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Crossing this threshold could lead to the end of life on Earth as we know it. For Costa Rica, climate change will likely put our 1,300 kilometers of coastline at risk, degrade our valuable forests and wetlands, and destroy our tourism sector, which generates around 30% of our jobs, exacerbate inequalities by affecting women, indigenous people, and most vulnerable populations, such as those living on the coast, much more strongly. Just as we cannot wait to battle our global pandemic, we cannot wait to fight our global climate emergency. We must act now.
Hello, my name is Rafael Monge, and I am the Director of the National Center of Geo-Environmental Information of the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, we are telling the story of nature for climate. As we look at the world around us, we need something to hope for. Working with the world's best scientists, we created a map of hope. A map we call the Big Enchilada. Why? Because it combines diverse ingredients using an innovative recipe to create a great output. Our ingredients, national and global spatial data. Our recipe, cutting-edge scientific methods. Our output, a map of hope that charts a way for us to take action to address the crisis of our times. This map of hope provides us with 3 simple solutions: protect, restore, manage. Protect. Protect nature to safeguard biodiversity and the services it provides to humanity. Restore. Restore nature that has been degraded by human actions. Manage. Manage nature to provide food and ensure human well-being. This is not an static map. It is a tool that breaks sectoral boundaries to address the climate emergency and ensure sustainable green recovery from the global pandemic. Our ministries are using the map for planning across our nation. We're using these approaches to provide inputs to Costa Rica's agro-environmental agenda, building climate resilience, support the development of our country's decarbonization plan, showing how nature can play a critical role to prevent future climate change, improve the management of Costa Rica's territory to obtain greater benefit from its iconic biodiversity, and green urban areas, improving living conditions in the city. And this is just the beginning.
Just as this work is breaking sectorial boundaries, it is also breaking national boundaries. Colombia, Kazakhstan, Peru, and Uganda are also creating maps of hope that put nature at the center of sustainable development. This is critical to our vision because just as climate change transcends national boundaries, so must our solutions. Maps of hope can guide us to take action on nature for climate, on nature for life. They can be a tool for accountability to the world on the Paris Climate Accord and the Sustainable Development Goals. From Costa Rica, with partners like UNDP, we believe that this is a unique opportunity to recover better. If we join together, we can achieve sustainable changes. We can ensure a greener, more inclusive, and resilient future. Join us.
What can spatial data offer the world? In Costa Rica, they're using it for climate and climate resilience. In Uganda, we are going to bring you an example of using spatial data for mapping nature for safety and well-being in Uganda. And I will get Thomas Okrut, who's Executive Director of the National Environment Management Authority, and Francis Ogwell, who's from Natural Resources. He's the Manager of Biodiversity and Rangelands in the National Environment Management Authority. They will explain how they're using spatial data in Uganda.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tom Okurut, Executive Director, National Environment Management Authority of Uganda. Uganda is blessed with the extraordinary biodiversity. We have over 18,000 species of flora and fauna, and constantly rank among the topmost 10 diverse countries in the world. These species thrive in Uganda because of the diverse habitats that are present in the country, ranging from the mountain ranges to the lakes, wetlands, and forests, river system network which are distributed around the country. However, Uganda, like most of the countries, is facing the challenge of encroachment on these natural ecosystems, mainly due to human-led environmental degradation imposed by increasing populations. So this is causing not only a threat to the environment and economy, but the very safety of our people. Forests can no longer effectively perform their expected roles, like stopping landslides. Wetlands can no longer absorb excessive waters because of reduced surface area, and the result is catastrophic. Of recent, you can see that the destruction of nature therefore makes us not only vulnerable, it's definitely killing us. There is no time to lose, and we must act now, therefore, to stop that change.
In Uganda, we are telling a story, and a very important one as such. The story is about the importance of nature for human well-being and also for our very safety on this planet. We have got in Uganda the third National Development Plan that supports the importance of nature in reducing disasters and risks. It emphasizes and recognizes the importance of protected areas and calls for restoration of degraded ecosystem. With our local scientists, we are creating a map that is focusing on the importance of nature for people. That map is actually going to show us how and where we need to take action to protect nature for people. And it is not just a map, but also we are building a story in this whole intervention. We are trying to get political will so that we can also integrate the most innovative global technologies with our own very own national knowledge. We have got top priorities in the countries as far as protecting nature for people is concerned, and this is stopping landslides, preventing flooding, keeping our regional ecosystem intact as much as we can, safeguarding our iconic ecosystem. So what we do is to engage a diverse group of stakeholders so that we together determine the priorities that are most important for Uganda. In using these inputs, we then work together with our own scientists and run a rigorous analysis, spatial analysis, to come up with a result. And what is that result? It is a map, and we are saying it is a map of hope that charts a clear course of nature-based solution that is needed for Uganda. So if we follow the map of hope, which we have come up with to protect, manage, and restore our landscapes, we can achieve our goals for nature and for human safety as well as human well-being. The post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework is going to be adopted to give us direction for the next 30 years to put nature back to a path to recovery. And spatial data is one of those that has been seen will play a very critical role in the implementation of that framework.
Human development and nature conservation are often considered as conflicting goals, but this is a false paradox. Because human health, well-being, livelihoods, disaster risk reductions are inextricably linked to healthy ecosystems. We know that we depend on nature, but right now, nature is depending on us.
I'm making notes down here. Nature is depending on us. Map of hope. Sounds so poetic, doesn't it? What is that even? Spatial data, when you combine that with on-the-ground mapping for essential areas where people need help, whether it be climate or health and well-being, you put those together. That right there is your map of hope. So what we're doing is we are looking and showcasing some of the countries the UNDP is working with right now using spatial data. Let's stop off in Colombia. In Colombia, they're mapping for nature, for water.
Soy Hernando García Martínez, director general del Instituto Humboldt. Colombia contiene el 10% de toda la biodiversidad del mundo. Ningún otro país tiene más especies de aves u orquídeas en el planeta. Tiene más de 90 tipos diferentes de ecosistemas. Y alberga más de 58.000 especies diferentes que han sido descritas por la ciencia. En Colombia, el agua es vida. El agua ha dado forma a nuestra cultura, esa Colombia anfibia. La naturaleza filtra y limpia el agua de la nieve y la entrega suavemente a los arroyos y riachuelos que fluyen hacia las personas, las ciudades y las industrias. Solo Bogotá usa millones de litros de agua al día de estos ecosistemas naturales para sustentar a sus cerca de 7.5 millones de habitantes. Pero la destrucción de estos ecosistemas que dan vida amenazan nuestro suministro de agua, amenazan la sangre vital de nuestro país.
Soy Fernando Flores Espinosa, gerente de la región administrativa de planificación especial del centro de Colombia. En el país contamos la historia de la naturaleza por el agua, una historia para garantizar el agua limpia para nuestro futuro. Pero para proteger el agua que nos da la vida necesitamos de datos. Datos que mapeen nuestros ríos y cuencas hidrográficas. Datos que tracen mapas de los lugares donde los bosques filtran el agua de las nubes y que mapean donde las presiones humanas amenazan estos procesos. Necesitamos datos para saber quién usa el agua y cuánta se necesita. En Colombia contamos con diversas instituciones que los construyen para tomar decisiones adecuadas para la gestión del recurso hídrico.
Hola, mi nombre es Jimena Puyana. Trabajo en Colombia como gerente nacional de desarrollo sostenible del PNUD. Junto con científicos nacionales e internacionales estamos creando un mapa que nos permitirá saber de dónde viene el agua para 15 millones de personas. Un mapa que nos permite conocer cuáles son los ecosistemas estratégicos que debemos conservar y preservar. Junto con esta información, los tomadores de decisiones con apoyo del PNUD podrán decidir mejores políticas públicas para la preservación de un recurso tan importante como es el agua. Los invito a todos a unirse alrededor de esta estrategia, tener mejor información, ponerla en mapas, saber en dónde están los lugares más importantes para la protección del agua, es vital no solo para esta generación, sino por supuesto para las generaciones futuras.
Down on the ground. Kazakhstan is the only Central Asian country that is in the UNDP pilot for these maps for hopes. So I'm going to hand over to Jakub Beris. He's a resident representative of the UNDP Kazakhstan.
Hello, my name is Jakub Beris and I am UNDP resident representative in Kazakhstan. The Republic of Kazakhstan has been bestowed with rich biodiversity that provides water, food, fuel, and other resources to its people. but we are watching these riches slip from our fingertips. Our steppes, once shimmered with an ocean of grasses, nourishing nomadic herders and their animals, now unsustainable agricultural practices, climate change, and land encroachment have turned wide swaths of these grassland to desert. The Aral Sea, once the world's fourth largest lake, in another time held diverse fish beneath its sparkling waters. Now humans have changed the course of the rivers that fed this vibrant inland sea, reducing it to 1/10 of its former size. This loss, one of the world's worst environmental disasters, has severe repercussions, diminishing our access to fish for sustenance and water for irrigation. Kazakhstan is not alone in this crisis. Across the region and around the globe, climate change and poor land management are incapacitating our food systems. Once thriving, our fields are turning fallow, our livestock are struggling to survive. The earth is sounding an alarm, and we have no choice but to respond. Kazakhstan tells the story of nature for food. Our food systems cannot be restored through a single solution. The forces behind land degradation are vast and varied, but spatial data can cut through the noise. Kazakhstan is creating a map of hope to reveal where we can take action to combat environmental degradation and attain food security. To do this, we are drawing on the world's best data. Our scientists and policymakers access premier global spatial data sets through the UN Biodiversity Lab, including data on desertification and land degradation, agricultural suitability, carbon stores, clean water supply, vital areas for biodiversity, and land cover, among others. With this input data, informed by national expertise and data, our map of hope will help us to discover where we can transform Kazakhstan's valuable steppes and inland seas to invest in a food-secure future. Our map of hope will help identify locations most amenable to planting drought-tolerant crop varieties, developing solar and wind technologies for irrigation, and planning for protected areas commitments. Just as global data can help us to identify where to take action on nature for food, it can also help us to monitor our progress. Using dynamic data, updated in a near real time, will help us track the impact of our actions. Our map of hope can serve as a beacon to other countries in Central Asia and around the world who face similar issues. Together, we can take the pulse of the planet. Together, we can take action for nature, for food, and for life. Join us.
In our tour of countries where the UNDP is running pilot programs for spatial data, we have been to Costa Rica to look at mapping for climate. We've been to Uganda to look at mapping for safety and well-being. We've been to Colombia looking at mapping for water. Kazakhstan mapping for food and food security. Now, of course, the spatial data can do all of this. It doesn't do it in little silos, but we want to give you very clear examples so you can focus in on all of the very different things that spatial data is able to do. So our final stop takes us to Peru and mapping for prosperity. Let's hit the video first, and then we're going to meet the Vice Minister, Gabriel Chiandria. But first, the video.
Mi nombre es Gabriel Quijandría y soy el viceministro de Desarrollo Estratégico de los Recursos Naturales del Ministerio del Ambiente. El mundo lucha por respirar. La destrucción de ecosistemas como los bosques conlleva la reducción gradual de los beneficios que estos prestan, lo cual es un factor que hace menos llevadera la pandemia que está destruyendo los pulmones de la humanidad. La COVID-19 nos demuestra las consecuencias de abusar de nuestro planeta. A pesar de haber sido tratada por mucho tiempo como desechable e inagotable, la naturaleza tiene las soluciones para la gente, para el planeta y para la prosperidad de todos y todas. El momento de la acción es ahora. El Perú quiere contar la historia de la búsqueda de la prosperidad a través del impulso de las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Una recuperación verde depende de nuestra capacidad de atender las necesidades de todas las personas. Para eso, los tomadores de decisiones necesitan acceso a datos oportunos y precisos, desde una mirada integral acorde al ecosistema y el entorno. Necesitan oír voces diversas. En el Perú, estamos escuchando tanto a los pueblos indígenas, jóvenes, ciudadanos y ciudadanas, como a los encargados de formulación de políticas para crear un mapa de la esperanza, que dará forma a la recuperación verde e inclusiva en el Perú. Desde la vibrante región amazónica de Ucayali hasta los límites de nuestro país, este mapa se basa en diversos conocimientos, datos y necesidades. Nos mostrará cómo la acción local y la acción nacional pueden ir de la mano para curar los pulmones de nuestro planeta y de nuestra gente. Nos mostrará también cómo acciones sostenibles sobre la naturaleza pueden llevar a la prosperidad. El COVID-19 es un síntoma de una mayor emergencia planetaria. Para prevenir otra crisis como esta, no podemos volver a lo de siempre. Debemos reimaginar la normalidad. A lo largo de la existencia de la vida en la Tierra, la naturaleza ha sabido regenerarse luego de grandes catástrofes. Y lo seguirá haciendo, con o sin humanos. Somos más bien nosotros los que no podemos vivir sin la naturaleza, y por ello debemos tomar medidas para salvaguardarla y así asegurar nuestra propia supervivencia. Únanse a nosotros para luchar por la naturaleza. Únanse a nosotros para luchar por la vida.
We are joined by the Vice Minister, fresh from his video. It's really nice to see you. We have a question for you already. I'm going to pose this question to you. Hi, Vice Minister, you with us? All right, fantastic. Mariana says, greetings from Peru. How are you envisioning the knowledge exchange process between the pilot countries once the maps of hope have been elaborated? What did you learn? How will other people learn from your experience, Vice Minister?
Hello. I think that would be very, very interesting in terms of being able to compare the knowledge and the information we're gathering with these maps. For instance, we have some similarities to Costa Rica, but also we have similarities with Kazakhstan. We have a desert, coastal desert areas that we can learn about how the experience they had with the RLC, for instance, and avoid that to happen to us with our irrigation projects in the coastal areas. So I think there is room for cross-learning between different countries in terms of generating evidence for policymakers to take the right decisions, including nature as part of the solutions. Taking in account that nature has overcome bigger crises than COVID-19. But we haven't. So we need nature to be part of the solution, to be part of the toolkits that we apply to solve the problem.
You know, when we have these videos, Vice Minister, we've had plenty of videos and we will have some more, and you only ever put the great stuff in the videos. You never put the challenges in the videos. Your video was beautiful from Peru. We saw communities, we saw nature. It was so beautiful. But what would be one challenge that you would tell people? Because that is the reality check from the pilot program. What would you share? One thing.
I think the main challenge will be to show that this is an opportunity. The crisis we are facing right now is an opportunity for us to go faster and deeper in the transitions that were already happening. The transition to production chains that are free from deforestation, the transition to sustainable energies, the transition to electromobility. So things that were already happening, but not happening in the right speed. So there can be the idea of we need to reverse that. We need to go slower. We need to go back to past models, past business models, or past models of management of the territory or the natural resources. And I think that it's not the situation. We need to move forward. We need to press harder in the right direction, to press harder in the direction of sustainability. And we need evidence. We need hard data, that it's the one that it's generated by these maps, for us to show us how good we're doing, and we are achieving these results we're hoping for.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. I will let you get back to your life, because it sounds very hectic back there. Vice Minister, I appreciate your focus. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn.
So, we need to dig a little bit deeper into tools and how to. And I have just the team to do this. So if we're looking at spatial data, what are the tools that we need to make the mapping happen? Let's go to Dr. Steve Bromby. He's a senior advisor at the National Geographic Society. Hi, Dr. Steve.
World leaders planning a path to a greener, more inclusive, and sustainable future need a new type of map, a dynamic map of the world that can be made automatically and updated continuously, that can inform decision makers about what and where to protect, restore, and manage, and that lets us observe the impact of our actions. Researchers at National Geographic Society, Google, and World Resources Institute are working together to make this map. We call it Dynamic World, and to make it, we have to teach computers to help us see and understand the world in new ways and at a previously unobtainable scale. World Resources Institute developed the labels we use to map the planet to support applications across the Rio Conventions and achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Google provided European Space Agency imagery at 10-meter resolution, enabling 1,000 times better resolution than existing global maps. National Geographic Society assembled a team to label tens of thousands of images across all major land types. We have produced over 1 billion human-labeled pixels, 10,000 times more labels than previously available. Google trained a machine learning model and is producing maps of countries, building towards a global map, using vast amounts of data and compute. Our team is now working with countries through UNDP and UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Center to demonstrate how these maps can be used to enable nature-based solutions. Nature for Climate, restoring forests in Costa Rica. Nature for Water, protecting coastal wetlands in Colombia. Nature for Food, managing agricultural land in Kazakhstan. Nature for Prosperity, supporting a green recovery for indigenous peoples in Peru. Nature for Safety and Well-being, reducing disaster risk in Uganda. Our hope in producing this map and making it available to all for free is that leaders and countries will use Dynamic World to help illuminate and protect the wonder of our world.
We're digging deep, we're going technical, so you can find out more about spatial mapping, spatial data. We're talking about tools. Data on marine and carbon. Dr. Enric Sala is an explorer in residence at the National Geographic Society. Dr. Sala, over to you.
Today, only 7% of the ocean is in marine protected areas, but we need much more. Why do we have only 7%? Mostly because there is a conflict with fishing. The fishing industry is telling us we cannot protect more because we need to catch more. But fisheries have been declining globally since the mid-90s. And today, 82% of the fish stocks are overfished. So what are we going to do? We are going to dispel this myth using data. Now we have global data on biodiversity, on fisheries, and on carbon stocks. that tell us that if we protect at least 30% of the ocean, the right 30%, we will obtain multiple benefits. One, biodiversity benefits. We would protect unique and irreplaceable marine biodiversity and all the ecosystem services that it provides, including food. That's the second benefit. We know that if areas are fully protected from fishing and well managed, there will be spillover of fish that it's going to help to replenish the areas around. So if we protect the right 30% of the ocean, the global fishing catch will actually increase. And three, we have a climate change mitigation benefit. Sediments on the seafloor contain twice the amount of carbon that we can find on the soils of the land. And activities like bottom trawling and eventually deep sea mining disturb huge amounts of this sediment that contain a lot of carbon, thus producing carbon emissions because some of that carbon is going to remineralize to carbon dioxide. So this is where new data, availability of data at the global scale, is going to help us design a network of marine reserves covering 30% of the planet for the benefit of people and nature. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to Andrew J. Plumtree. What Andrew is going to do is talk to us about some key biodiversity areas, and he is the head of the Key Biodiversity Areas Secretariat. I'm going to practice how to say biodiversity, and Andrew will talk to you.
We know that global biodiversity is undergoing unprecedented declines, and that biodiversity is not distributed equally across the planet. But for decades, we've failed to agree on where is most important for biodiversity. As a result, we've been unable to guide governments and business on where conservation actions should be prioritized or development activities restricted. Over the years, it became obvious that in order to halt biodiversity loss, we needed a standard measure to assess areas of global importance for biodiversity that can be applied to all countries and ecosystems. In 2004, the World Conservation Congress asked the conservation community to develop just such a standard. After years of multi-stakeholder consultations and using decades of science and on-the-ground experience, 11 criteria for the identification of key biodiversity areas, or KBAs, were agreed and published in 2016. At the same time, the KBA Partnership was launched, bringing together 13 of the world's largest conservation organizations to agree on one approach and to roll out the KBA program together. The World Database of KBAs currently holds data on more than 16,000 sites. This information can be readily accessed and is being used by governments to guide protected area expansion, by finance institutions and companies to avoid impacts on the most important places, and by donors to channel funding to where it will have the greatest impact. Unlike many global data sets, KBAs are assessed at national level by local experts and stakeholders. Several countries are starting to identify their KBAs. Canada, South Africa, and Mozambique have been making the most comprehensive assessments across many species groups. KBA national coordination groups are being established in countries to move the KBA assessment process forward. KBAs are being recognized as critical for guiding spatially explicit national biodiversity strategy and action plans, as well as in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Key biodiversity area identification and conservation must form a core component of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework if we are to succeed in halting biodiversity loss and putting nature on a path to recovery by 2030.
We continue our look at data, the data that is required to map for nature. Dr. Andrew Hansen is Professor of Ecology at Montana State University. He's going to take us into the NASA Forest Integrity Project. Dr. Hansen.
I'm Andrew Hansen at Montana State University. The global community set targets to protect a large area of forests by 2020, but they did not consider the quality of those forests. High-quality forests are important for biodiversity, carbon, water, and livelihoods. Our research team asked, where are the best of the last of the tropical forests? Without knowing, governments cannot take action to safeguard these areas. To answer this question, we use 3 types of satellite data to map forest structure and human pressure. We then combine them in an index of forest structural integrity. We discovered that high integrity forests comprise only 1/3 of the moist tropical biome, are mostly unprotected, and are rapidly being lost. We use this information to develop a policy-driven framework with 4 strategies: maintain protection, enhance protection, restore forest landscapes, and reduce human impacts. We piloted the project in 8 countries and have shared data with an additional 21 countries. We're now asking, how has the human footprint changed over time? Do high integrity forests mitigate extinction risk for vertebrates? Which high integrity forests best connect protected areas? And how can countries and the world take action for integrity? We advocate that ecosystem integrity be included as a 2030 target to ensure the health of planet and people. You can learn more here.
I'm going to pivot now from data to tools, and we're going to have a look at the nature map. Here's Guido.
Hello, we're very pleased to launch Nature Map today. Nature Map is a new decision support tool for integrated strategies covering biodiversity, carbon, water, and other nature services. This work has been led by YASA from Austria, the International Institute for Sustainability in Rio, SDSN, and UNEP WCMC. We've launched Nature Map because national biodiversity and climate strategies make too little use of maps today, even though, of course, we all know that such maps are vital for understanding the challenges and charting integrated strategies for biodiversity, nature-based solutions, and climate. Spatial data is becoming more increasingly available, but it remains fragmented and hard to access for many users. This is what Nature Map aims to address. Our decision support tool is publicly available together with all its data on the UN Biodiversity Lab webpage. We're very grateful for financial support from the government of Norway. This map shows global conservation priorities if one integrates across biodiversity, carbon, and water. It gives you a sense of the kind of data that Nature Map can generate. This can be customized at local, national, and regional scales. Users can add data, remove data, change weights. In addition to conservation priorities, we're also looking at restoration. This map has been presented and developed by the International Institute for Sustainability using the Plangaea platform. A first national application is underway, led by the Fundación Bariloche in Argentina. The researchers have applied nature map techniques to develop national scale maps of biodiversity, carbon, water, and croplands. These are being aggregated now, combined in order to support integrated land use planning in the country. In terms of next steps, we want to promote such country-level applications. In addition to Argentina, work is starting in Colombia, India, Indonesia, Mexico, and some of the Amazon states in Brazil. We're keen to work with other governments and to hear from you if you'd like to apply some of the techniques and perhaps data from Nature Map. Second is we want to work with ELSA and many other partners to advocate for spatial data and climate and biodiversity strategies. Third, we want to continue to improve the layers on the UN Biodiversity Lab webpage. And finally, we see opportunities to integrate terrestrial data from Nature Map with the marine data that National Geographic have presented. Please reach out to us if you're interested to find out more and if you're interested to apply some of the Nature Map data. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Guido was so understated, so humble. They launched the Nature Map. They have just launched it. Dr. Guido Schmidt, Traub, Executive Director of Sustainable Development Solutions Network, just adding a little bit of excitement to your announcement. All right, we continue looking at tools. Thank you for your patience, Kirill. Kirill Pretorius is the Deputy Director of UNEP WCMC. She is going to talk to us about the World Database on Protected Areas. Thanks, Kirill. We are looking at mapping for nature using spatial data from satellites, then using on-the-ground mapping technology, and those two combinations of tech and coming together, sometimes known as a map of hope, because of what that information can actually do. We are sending you information. It's flying through the screen at you. I know that. But if you go to the Nature for Life hub and you look underneath the section for this actual conversation, you will find so many resources there. If you've missed something, you'll be able to catch up. Now, talking about resources, we're going to go to the World Resources Institute. Dr. Janet Ranganathan is the Vice President for Research at Data and Innovation at the World Resources Institute. And Dr. Ranganathan will tell us about Resource Watch. Thank you.
Resource Watch is a one-stop open shop for finding, visualizing, and sharing actionable information on the state of the planet and its links to people. Global challenges, climate change, food and water insecurity, disease and fires are complex and often interwoven, playing out across multiple scales, requiring joined-up approaches to address. Resource Watch drives transparency and accountability. In Indonesia, local journalists use it to create a microsite showing the human causes and impacts of the devastating forest fires. A combination of interviews and powerful data visualizations help push back against a false narrative that fires are a natural phenomenon rather than linked to human land management. We will soon shine an even brighter spotlight on land management. We have partnered with Google and National Geographic to create a 10-meter resolution global land cover map using modern artificial intelligence. A pilot version is already informing planning in Costa Rica, and we will work with UN Biodiversity Lab, Impact Observatory, and others to scale its use to additional countries. Users can also customize their experience on Resource Watch, creating personal dashboards and alerts which send information straight to their phone on hundreds of high-quality datasets, many near real-time. And soon, they will also be able to upload their own datasets to combine and visualize with the Resource Watch datasets. Resource Watch API is open source, meaning others can build applications on it. Examples include Global Forest Watch and the Water, Peace and Security Initiative, which recently won the Luxembourg Peace Prize for its cutting-edge early warning prediction model for water risks and conflicts. What gets mapped gets managed. Resource Watch helps to get the right information in the right hands at the right time to drive more joined-up approaches for a sustainable future.
There's so many tools in our toolbox. It's pretty much overflowing. We were talking about the data, first of all, data that is available to map for nature. And then we pivoted to the tools, and you have been hearing from various different organizations from around the world, from various established, extraordinary science teams about the tools that they are able to use for spatial mapping. We go now to Jeffrey Parrish from the Nature Conservancy. And Jeffrey is going to tell us about the oceans, mapping nature for people and planet, but his focus is going to be on our oceans. Jeffrey.
Hi, I'm Jeff Parrish, the Global Managing Director for Protection Efforts for the Nature Conservancy.
I'm honored to share with you today how the Nature Conservancy is using data to map a course for the future of nature, people, and the planet. This is the first year of the last decade we have left to address the biodiversity crisis and to protect living carbon reserves in nature to ensure we meet our planet's climate goals. TNC was founded in the 1950s by scientists, and we're driven by science every day. But today, we live in a very different world. Ecosystems are massively converted, protection efforts have fallen short, and the effects of climate change are here now. Our scientists have developed spatial data sets looking at the full range of terrestrial, marine, and freshwater biodiversity that we, as part of a living planet, cannot afford to lose. With Conservation International, TNC has mapped these living carbon reserves as well as biodiversity. Losing these stores of carbon would erase all the gains we could make with the expansion of renewable energy. We're therefore overlaying these innovative assessments of biodiversity assets and living carbon reserves so that we can double down on the absolutely most important landscapes and seascapes that will save all species, including our own. The threats are significant. We're losing 22 football fields of habitat per minute around the world, and we've lost 68% of all wildlife since 1970, the year I was born. And when we overlaid the footprint of our world's indigenous peoples, to whom we all owe respect and gratitude, we see that at least a third of these priority areas are under their effective and millennia-old stewardship. They have stewarded this planet throughout history, and the planet's future depends on our authentic partnerships and support of their leadership. Indeed, none of us can do this alone. That's why TNC will make our data and maps available to all nations and all peoples in the effort to protect 30% of the Earth's habitats by 2030. With the best science, radical partnership, and innovative financing, we will succeed at securing representative and durable protection of the Earth's biodiversity and living carbon reserves.
There's one person who can bring this all together. We are looking at tools and data for making maps of hope. And there's one person who can hold it all together, because there's one person who's holding all of this together for Nature for Life Hub, and that is Jameson Irvin, Dr. Jameson Irvin. She is the manager of the Global Program on Nature for Development. If you don't understand this session after you've heard her, then you need to go home. You may already be home. Dr. Irvin, over to you.
More than 2,000 satellites stream data every second. We've generated more data in the last 2 years than in all of human history. But are we using this data to make better decisions on the ground to solve our most pressing environmental challenges?
I'm Jameson Irvin, and I'd like to share how we at UNDP are helping governments and communities map nature to achieve their own sustainable development goals.
Suppose you care about water security in Tanzania, a country that depends on intact forests for its water security. You could start with a map of Dar es Salaam's hydroshed and a map of forest cover or forest cover loss, and perhaps of protected areas. But data alone is not enough. It's the insights and the decisions that flow from those insights that matter most when it comes to actions on the ground. That's why we created the UN Biodiversity Lab, to help decision makers go from data to insight to decision. We can identify where forests are most important for Dar es Salaam's water security. We can ask where we need to restore forests, protect and manage intact forests, and improve existing protected areas. The result is a spatialized action plan for improving Tanzania's water security. But what if you want a map that tells you where to protect, manage, and restore nature to achieve all of your nature-dependent goals, not just water? Areas important for goals like carbon storage, or threatened species, or cattle, or goats, or crops. At UNDP, we are pioneering a process that allows decision makers to create a map of essential life support areas, where decision makers can dial up and dial down different values to customize their own map. In Costa Rica, for example, the government started with a map of land cover and added a layer of biodiversity intactness, carbon storage, of human impacts, of protected areas, and many other layers, and combined these layers into a single map that shows where Costa Rica can protect, manage, and restore nature to achieve all of their nature-dependent goals. They even added a layer for urban trees to help cool San Jose. That's cool. In January, UNDP and partners will launch UN Biodiversity Lab 2.0. This upgraded portal will allow users to choose any location and summarize key metrics, gain insight by visualizing trends over time, and display these insights geospatially. UN Biodiversity Lab 2.0 will provide key analytics, such as the amount of carbon in protected areas and ecological intactness. These analytics can form the basis of national targets and indicators that can inform global targets set by the Convention on Biological Diversity.
At UNDP, our hope is that the UN Biodiversity Lab can transform how governments and communities use data to map nature for people and for the planet.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Finally, we are bringing together a group of people from the private sector, from NGOs, from groups that work with indigenous communities in grassroots areas, and basically ask them, how are they using spatial data? How is that helping you towards sustainable development? And I have such a great group. We're going to throw them all up together. And we have Rachel, Giovanni, Johnson, and Julia. And we're going to put them up so you can see them. Nice pictures. Let's see how their pictures compare with them, really. Yeah, pretty good, actually.
Hello.
Pretty good. Hello there.
Yes, I can hear you.
You need to put your video on. We'll wait for you. We'll ask you last. All right, Johnson, introduce yourself to the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Johnson Cerda. I'm indigenous, Quechua indigenous from the Ecuadorian Amazon. I'm born in the jungle, and I have a lot of experience, in stuff of the jungle. I'm working now with the dedicated grant mechanism for indigenous peoples and local communities with Conservation International.
Fantastic. Rachel, what do we need to know about you to appreciate you in this panel?
Hi, Femi. Hi, everyone. Well, my name is Rachel Barret. I'm the head of environmental leadership within L'Oréal, a big giant in beauty. I'm in charge of sustainability agenda for the group, leading some different programs on biodiversity and climate, and implementing our new L'Oréal for the Future sustainability ambition for 2030.
Fantastic. Hello there, Julia. Tell everybody who you are.
Hi, Femi. I'm Julia Stellari from Unilever, and I work in sustainable sourcing. I'm part of the team that helps to bring to action Unilever's commitments to climate and nature.
All right. So as soon as Giovanni is ready, camera ready, we're going to bring him back into the conversation. He's going to sit tight there for a moment. I really want to ask all of you what your commitment is with spatial data and how you're using it. Julia, do you want to start first of all?
Sure. So, we believe that to tackle the problems that we have today around climate change, biodiversity loss, deforestation, and inequality, it's really important to have visibility to what is happening on the ground, because we believe that through that transparency, we can achieve transformation. And so we're working with data such as geospatial data, Earth observation, geolocation tracking, in order to really get a better understanding of what is happening, where our commodities are being sourced. Because ultimately, in order to change what is happening on the ground, we need to be able to direct our partnerships and our relationships to the places where the action and the change needs to happen.
Julia, can you give me an example of that? I'm trying to imagine that, but this is probably bigger than I can even imagine. Give me one example. So I see how Unilever is using spatial data.
Sure. So I can reference a partnership that we just recently launched with a company called Orbital Insight. And with Orbital Insight, we are working to understand what the very early stages of our supply chain look like. So for example, using geolocation tracking in order to understand that first mile, the connection between the suppliers that we are sourcing from and their sourcing locations looks like. It's very early stages, so it's still too early to say exactly where it is developing, but we think it's a kind of quite a promising technology because of its ability to scale.
Right. Okay. All right. So it's baby steps right now. Johnson, for you, how are you using spatial data? Can you describe it to us, please?
Well, I would start saying that historically maps only show, populated areas, and in my case in the Amazon, only green for forests with little dots for villages. But currently having access to the spatial data and, updated maps, indigenous people can see the forest loss and impacts coming close to their community. Traditionally, we do have, as indigenous peoples, areas already demarcated using our collective indigenous knowledge and wisdom. Mapping the use of the resources in our territories has been really, really important exercise to claim the land title in Guyana, Venezuela, and many other countries in the last perhaps 25 or 30 years. So even we are happy with our information currently getting into the maps, we have some concerns. First of all, the compatibility of the maps. I'm not an expert, but I've heard a lot about that. Based on the work we are doing on the ground and how the government or what type of information the government wants actually to receive. Also, it's important to highlight that it is important that there is information that some communities do not want to be public. I've seen in the maps, the oil companies' spaces, you can see that. Same thing in the communities, we have spaces that we don't want to show, and communities that we don't want to show. With the map is really interesting that we can see everything, but there are some spaces that we don't want to, show to others.
Rochelle, unless you know L'Oreal really well as a company, you will not know their commitment to sustainability, environment. So where does this idea of spatial data fit into your philosophy as a company? What are you doing?
Well, thanks, Femi, for the question. Well, for us as a beauty company, as you can imagine, we are quite downstream user of all these forest-related commodities, all these nature-based ingredients that are used to manufacture our cosmetic products. And the supply chain of this wide range of different cosmetics ingredients are often very, very long, ramified, complex, with up to 7 to 10 different intermediaries from the field where they grow to the factory where we use them to manufacture our products. And if we have long been committed to sustainable sourcing and to fight against deforestation, well, we have needed very precise access to all these data coming from the ground, coming from the field, to guarantee that we had 100% sustainable sourcing of all of our raw materials. But we know that sustainable certification is not always enough, and we had to proactively map all our supply chain to ensure 100% traceability beyond certification, all the way back to sources. And this is something that we've done in partnership, in collaboration with our supplier. And for some specific case, if not all, but most of them, the direct access to the data from the field, thanks to spatial data, have been instrumental because it provided us a very powerful lever to independently assess and mitigate all our risk far beyond our first-year suppliers, but also to monitor in real time all our intervention on the ground with suppliers, even indirect suppliers, and all the external partners like conservationists or experts NGO working with us and our indirect supplier on the ground. So key for us and instrumental for the implementation of our sustainable sourcing activities.
Giovanni, we are not going to let the fact that we cannot see you mean that we cannot hear you in this conversation. You are so important. Giovanni, first of all, introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them what you do.
Yes, thank you very much. What we do here in the Philippines is to translate the indigenous knowledge about their terrains. And
we will see if we can get the audio of Giovanni back. This is a live session, so anything is possible in this live session. So we will just leave him there, leave a little black hole there. Hopefully he'll come back to us. Do you know what I was thinking, panelists? And this is my question for you, and then you can start asking each other questions. This sounds extraordinary. We have sat for 90 minutes listening to tools and technology and how spatial data may well be able to or can help us in all sorts of different areas in our life in terms of food and climate, water, all sorts of things. Everybody was listening, paying attention. How much does it cost, though, as a business? Is it something that only big companies can do, or only you can do if the UNDP is there helping you? Johnson, do you want to handle that first of all? Yeah. Is there a cost to the new technology? Often it tends to be expensive, then it comes down.
well, it's complicated because we have seen in the communities recently having access to the technology. It's been really, as you said, really expensive and not accessible for communities. And now working in partnership with conservation organizations, we have access to the technology, and we are using in communities drones and also other tools in order to map the territories and insert the information that we have in the community. But the main message is that somehow we need to make more accessible this for communities, because the information on the situation of the biodiversity, the corridors of wildlife and everything is in the community. We do have in the communities that information, and we can insert that information in this in the map. And also, I think the science can help us to strengthen the process communities are doing to manage and protect the biodiversity. So opening a little bit more, to be accessible, that technology, that will help a lot of communities.
Mm-hmm. Going to Rachel, with a lot of the work that you're doing, you're pioneering, you're kind of ahead of anyone else in the industry. How does that make life either difficult or easy if you're out there before anyone else is out there, especially if we're looking at spatial data, spatial mapping?
Well, you're right, Femi. This is a lot about innovation, and a company cannot tackle that kind of sustainability issue and challenges alone. So we really needed to associate our supply chain, partners, meaning our first-tier suppliers, but beyond them, all the suppliers involved in our supply chain. And one of the key aspects of our successes and achievements on the field have been our ability not only to push for a top-down approach, requesting for traceability data or precise monitoring, but really building this kind of new tools, technology approach in partnership and in collaboration with all the supply chain actors, especially the suppliers, so that to share these tools and that to enable them to use this spatial data also for the monitoring of the sustainable supply chains. So collaboration has been key to push that kind of innovation in our case.
We were very patient. It was worth the wait. Giovanni, we see you. If you press unmute, that little microphone there, the blue microphone, press it, and then we'll be able to hear you. And then we will be able to have your contribution in the conversation. Yes. Now I'm so happy. Giovanni, I know that was a big sigh, but make it worth it, Giovanni. Giovanni, first of all, tell everybody who you are. Introduce yourself so they understand the context with which you're talking about this tank. Go ahead, Giovanni. Thank you for your patience.
I'm Giovanni. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm Giovanni, and I belong to the Kantanaay tribe of Northern Luzon. I'm currently the president of the Philippine Indigenous Community Conserve Area Consortium, and I'm also seated as a member of the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group of the Global Environmental Facility. And I'd like to thank you for the invitation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And I would say local time for Giovanni, although we're in the virtual world, so there is no time, there are no clocks. But in the real world in which Giovanni is sitting, it is very early in the morning, and no human being should be up as early as he is. So thank you for that. We appreciate you. And then asking you about spatial data. How are you using it? How is it going to be useful for the work that you do?
We have to first make the community feel that they are part of the work. So we put together traditional knowledge and science to enable them and to be able to translate knowledge and values into their material and physical dimension in the form of 3D models and maps. That goes to say that the values and spiritual, cultural values that they attach to these lands are translated into the physical dimension in the form of maps, so that they can see what their knowledge say about their territories. And so what we do here is that we merge mapping and their interpretation of their landscapes, so that the relationship of indigenous peoples to their land is defined. Once these definitions are clear, then this would be used later for evidence-based conservation planning.
Julia, I am going to give you hosting duties right now. Which of your fellow panelists would you like to ask a question to? You need to unmute yourself first of all. You don't get out of it that easily. Very sneaky. Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
That's good. You gave me an extra second to think about it. I'd love to hear from Johnson about an example of a collaboration that you feel is particularly exemplifying the use of digital and spatial data in
Julia, that was a great question. Can I leave now? And I'm just going to leave the rest of the session to you. Oh, this is so good. Bye. Go ahead, Johnson. Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, well, the example that we have a lot working with indigenous communities, the essential idea is that we have to provide training and tools to the communities in order to have the real information from what's going on there. And in some cases that I've seen a lot doing some exercise in terms of corridors, for instance. Actually, in my own community, using this kind of information, we've been working on see how we can establish a corridor for the wildlife. Actually, we know already, where the wildlife it's going, but I've seen that it's helping a lot in order to work a little bit in the buffer zone of a protected area that we have in the community. So it's helping a lot, but the idea is how we can, provide these tools and training to communities, and not just to bring people to work in the community and then go away, but it's better to leave the information, the experience, expertise in the community in order to expand the work we are doing there.
Giovanni, as you had so many valiant efforts to join us, I am going to give you hosting duties. Ask one of your co-panelists a question that is relevant and on topic.
Would you share with us, Johnson, the results of any interactions between science and indigenous knowledge in communities that you work with?
Oh my goodness, you're putting me to shame. You have fabulous questions. Go ahead, Johnson, but make it brief because we're almost at the end. Actually, we are at the end. Make it very brief.
One of the exercise I've seen I think in my first intervention, I said about Guyana, and I've seen closely what they have done there. In order to get the land title in Guyana, the government has requested to identify the areas they are using. So what they did is they used the mapping exercise in order to, in a map, identify where they are using and what they are doing in that areas. And it was more than the area the government was willing to provide information. But one of the problems is that I also said about the compatibility. One of the problems was I think in Venezuela, where communities, they were demarcating and using maps, so doing the same exercise. And the map or the requirements from the government were different. So I don't know if that's the technology or something. They lost a lot of time, and that was really a concern in the community because they wanted to work together with the government and put, a clear map and provide the land title for the communities. So it's been a great experience. But sometimes, the technology, as I said, I'm not the expert on that, but the technologies, the communities are using maybe are not compatible with that.
All right, Johnson, thank you. Giovanni, thank you. That was an excellent question. Right, everybody has one sentence, okay? One sentence. And it should be a short sentence. I am going to imagine you in a decade's time, in 10 years' time. How will spatial data, do you think, transform your sector? Now it's in 10 years' time, so I'm not gonna hold you to this, but imagine a decade from now. Rochelle, 10 years' time.
Well, I guess that if we think about what will be the next 10 year in terms of access to spatial data, I would dream, as explained by Giovanni and by Johnson as well, to be able, as a business actor, to really get access to spatial data that also include communities' perspective and social dimensions. in addition to the spatial data that we have access to today, so as to monitor the sustainability of our supply chain, both from an environmental and social perspective as well, as we are totally convinced that inclusivity and fairness are conditioned to sustainability.
This is a hard question, so you can keep it short because who knows for 10 years' time, but you are thought leaders. So I'm expecting you to give me a good answer. Julia, 10 years' time, spatial data in your sector. What will you be doing with it?
My hope would be that the digital angle and the power of geospatial data really help to foster unprecedented collaboration through the transparency that it generates so that we can engage the people, the communities, the private sector actors, the public sector actors, our supplier partners in making the changes happen on the ground which need to happen to tackle nature loss and climate change. And so that we indeed, as Rachel was saying, also touch on that physical and social dimension of the problem as well.
Johnson.
Used by Rachel in terms of inclusivity. I believe that it's important that we need to integrate the knowledge from communities and the willing of the government to work on sustainable development and not just use this information to make policies against sometimes communities. So it's important to have, integrate inclusivity and work on vision for the future. We do have that in communities, and I believe conservation organizations also are willing to help their communities on that.
Yeah. Giovanni, I'm going to give you the last word because it almost took the last word to get you into this conversation. Take us forward 10 years' time in your sector.
Yes. By 2030, the indigenous peoples of the world shall have reclaimed their lands, shall have all those who have been dispossessed because of mapping, shall have reclaimed their lands, and culture and nature affinity shall have been strongly reaffirmed.
This is why we work so hard to make sure we had you in the conversation, Giovanni. What a wonderful way to end on. Giovanni and Johnson and Rachel and Julia, you're an excellent panel. I appreciate you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
This wraps up our session. You're welcome. Mapping nature for people and planet, the Big Enchilada, part of a whole series called Global Ambition. I think we absolutely aimed high. Thank you for being part of this session. My name is Femi, okay? Take care, everybody.
Thank you all for tuning into our third day of the Nature for Life Hub. What an astounding lineup of panelists and speakers we have had so far. We cannot wait for you to join us for our last day tomorrow as we celebrate local solutions, hear from incredible youth activists and indigenous leaders, and officially recognize this year's Equator Prize recipients with an award ceremony. That is all happening tomorrow on natureforlifehub.org, at UNDP Live on Twitter, and Equator Initiative on Twitter as well. We'll see you there.